Hi everyone, Darren Hunter here. I'm with Michael Sanz. This is the Outsourced PM podcast show where we teach you how to unbusy your team, take the mundane, take the grunt work, admin, assistant tasks off them and give them to outsourced virtual assistants who can do them far more effectively, efficiently, consistently, and more cost effectively than what your team can. So that's what this is all about. And Michael, let's talk about today. We're talking about the issues that can occur with virtual assistants. We can't hide behind the fact that, we're going to have issues when we delegate tasks to virtual assistants. And in this case, we do promote the using Filipino virtual assistants. In episode 1, we talked about the reasons why. We explored all the different countries. We found that the Philippines has all the ducks in a row when it comes to getting the right outsourced staff. But I think before we get started, Michael, let's talk about issues. Now, let's just go to a traditional model and team on the ground in the office, getting system work done, getting admin staff tasks done. What are some of the issues that we can have with a team in the office on the ground?
Some of the issues with someone in the office?
You just talk about the traditional model. So an office is not using virtual assistants. They're getting their admin, their assistant tasks done in the office, the mundane, those repetitive tasks. What are some of the issues that they would be struggling with?
Yeah, I find that people working in an office, there's a few things, right? You want to have a social environment, but sometimes there's too much of a social environment, meaning that there's too much talk in between tasks. So when someone would be spending 8 hours of work, maybe 6 hours of that might actually be working time. But then again, are they busy being busy? Like if someone had one task to do and 8 hours to do it, they're going to take 8 hours to do that one task. But if you gave someone 10 tasks in 8 hours, they're going to find time to do the 10 tasks in that 8 hours. So are they being managed properly? Sick days, being overwhelmed, burnt out, all these things that are really real.
There's so many problems, isn't there? And I think, when we're dealing with, we're based in Australia, dealing with Australian workers, there is problems with it, work ethic that can occur. There's problems in, as you said, efficiency, people just not getting their work done, chit chat, always on their phones, looking at Facebook, all those sorts of things. But I think one of the big issues is staff turnover. And, the staff turnover rates are huge. There's no secret in property management. Property managers don't last in general more than 2 years. I reckon it's a lot less. COVID wiped out so many. The office has to go and find new experienced staff. And it's just this never-ending hamster wheel of pain and disillusionment. So staff turnover is a real issue. We can't overlook that particular problem. And so virtual assistants offer so many benefits. We get the right people, they stay forever, so we don't have staff turnover. There's a real consistency, plus it's far more cost effective of getting that task done with an outsourced worker than getting it done by your team. But what we're saying is that, there are inherent problems getting tasks done with your team on the ground, but it's a lot better to get it done by virtual assistants in so many different ways. But we can't ignore the fact that having virtual assistants, we've got to understand the issues of transferring our workload there. Now, Michael, in episode 2, we identified up to 30 tasks that can actually be offloaded away from our team members in the office to virtual assistants very successfully. And you can get that list. Just go to teamsbydesigntasks.com. That's teamsbydesigntasks.com. So you can get that full list of all the different things you can actually outsource. But Michael, so let's focus on 6 different key issues that we've got to be aware of and we've got to be able to navigate if we're going to make our outsourcing and getting our team unbusy and getting those mundane tasks transferred to virtual assistants. So we've got a list here. Let's just start with some of the biggies, the mindsets that people have, particularly with people that haven't used virtual assistants.
Just on this too, Darren, these are also the reasons why people give up. So like when people go and recruit virtual assistants and any one of these issues, as soon as they encounter them, they're really likely to say, this isn't working for me.
Yes.
So I think it's important that we're going to address these issues now, not for you to say, this isn't working for me.
Yes.
Say, how do I avoid it from happening? How do I fix it? You know, one of the most obvious ones that people around the globe talk about is when the VA goes AWOL, like they vanish. So you've gone through the recruitment process. You've said, you're great. These are the tasks we want you to do. And you say, here you go, Darren. Here's 10 tasks I need you to do. And then you don't hear anything from them.
They disappear. I've had this personally in around about 2009, 2010 with an assistant who was based in the Philippines that just disappeared for 2 weeks. Now, Michael, let's just talk about going AWOL, because it is an issue. And I think we need to understand this problem, all right, that can occur from time to time. It's not a big issue, but it can occur. We've got to be aware of it. What's behind going AWOL? Let's talk about cultural issues.
So first, I think when people go missing, it comes down to communication, right? And it could be that you're just not communicating, or that you haven't got an open platform of communication. Generally, when people go missing, there's a number of issues, right? Poor training. So I've said, Darren, here's a task for you to do. Go on YouTube and find out how to do it. They don't know how to do it. They go silent because they don't want to disappoint you. Like, their culture is they don't want to let you down. And yes, by going AWOL lets you down, they think, well, I don't know how to do it, so I just won't do it. And then you're gonna butt heads. Now, when they do a task, don't just think, oh, Darren didn't dot those I's, and I told him to dot all those I's. You've got to communicate that. You've got to give feedback. Say, Darren, I'm not happy with the work you've done, or I'm happy with the work you've done, but I need this. So have communication and record the sessions that you're giving the communication with, so it's logged. They can go back and refer to it. This is what we spoke about then. Failing to follow up. So you give a task to the VA and you think, oh, that's just going to be done. Great, I can breathe now. But you need to have that two-way communication to know, hang on, I've given you that task now. It's been done. Great, we move on to the next one. Another thing here, Darren, which people fail at, and it's just human nature. You may not be the best teacher to show someone how to do a task, right? You might do things the wrong way. You might not know how to explain. There might be 10 steps to the process, and you tell them how to do it in 3 steps, but they're left trying to figure out, how do I get from step 1 to 3? Hasn't been told. Yep. There are people that do their training without recording the screen.
Yeah. I know. We came across it just recently. Screen recording is so important because you can record mini tasks you want to delegate, or permanent tasks that need to be delegated, whether it's screen recording your property management software function on how to do a lease renewal or change a date or whatever, or just a one-off task you want to do. We use loom.com. Loom.com is a great screen recording function. But let's just go back, because we're exploring the issues around going AWOL, people going missing. And Michael, you're relating to short-term issues where they might disappear, but you hit a good point there. And understanding Filipino culture is that they don't want to disappoint you. So you could actually say, hey, here's the task, on your way. Do you understand it? And they're going, yes, I understand. And they don't. So right from the start with my team, I make it very clear. No one is to be polite. There is no politeness here. If you do not understand a task and how I've explained it, you must let me know. Do you agree to that? Because working on my team, you must agree. And they go, yes, because if you don't, this is what can happen. And I explain the consequences of what could happen if they don't understand that particular task. So they can see by being polite and saying, yeah, I understand, and they don't, in fact, we're causing a much bigger problem than simply putting up their hand and saying, hey, look, can you explain that to me again? And once I just made that clear and they fully understand the consequences of being too polite, it wasn't a problem.
Because you're also setting the expectations. Like, one of the failures here when people also go missing is you're creating unrealistic expectations from the person. So again, comes back to, you're hiring them for a certain amount of tasks, but you also want them to do video editing, and they don't know how to do it.
Yep.
They may just feel uncomfortable and they don't want to disappoint you. So they'd rather disappear. And some will go, missing. Now, family is also another reason people go AWOL.
We wanted to get to that, yes.
And, I had an example once many years ago. We had someone working with us, new recruit, perfect. Like on paper, everything was great. But there was a disaster in the village where the family was from. I didn't hear anything about it, nothing. A month later, they came back saying, hey, boss, I'm ready to work. And I'd already re-recruited because I didn't hear anything back again. And I was like, where did you go? What happened? And
let's talk about the white elephant in the room first.
It's like there was a flood in the village and you went back to help the family. So that's okay. Like, let us know because we would like to help. Right. But they were missing, so there's family pressures too. We had another instance too where we had a staff member and the husband didn't want her working for men. Right. And so there's a cultural thing there. So these are all like learning curves, right? That if you were doing this on your own, you wouldn't know what to look for. We know what to look for because we've, taken every step in every different type of shoot.
So I think you've got to have these conversations with the virtual assistant up front, particularly on the AWOL thing. And I've had this conversation with my team. And I remember my team member once disappeared for a day. And I just said, you take a day off. That's cool, but you must let me know. I was out. No, you go, you tell a friend, you give them my number, you message me, you call another team member to message me to let me know or whatever, but you must let me know. And so I've made that very clear. Communication is a must. Now, many, many, many years ago, I had a person disappear for 2 weeks. That was a real issue. And it was a family related issue because we got to put this on the table, Michael. Family is everything to people in the Philippines. It's a good value to have. It really is. And they will, if a family member's sick or whatever, they will prioritize that family member. But again, it just comes down to have an agreement with your staff member. They must communicate with you to let you know and don't be left in the dark. I've made it very clear our team members cannot leave us in the dark with wondering what's gone on. So just to be aware of the AWOL issues, clear communication up front. Michael, let's just move very quickly to accent issues and training, because that's another problem. People aren't effectively training their team, but also accent issues. They don't, people might be thinking, I don't want to take on a VA because of the accent. We have covered it in another episode, but let's just quickly cover that again.
I think a lot of the times issues with an accent might be to do with how we interpret the accent and how we think other people are going to react when they hear another accent. Again, we're very multicultural, even like New Zealand, right? There's a high population of Filipinos living in Auckland. In Australia, there were heaps pre-COVID. And remember too, globally, Philippines supply the largest volume of nurses globally above any other country. So, the Philippines, and there's 110 million people in the Philippines, right? People are familiar with the accents. Now, that said, yes, we have to listen to pronunciation of words to make sure that clarity over the phone, over the video is clear. Darren, I speak fast and I mumble and I'm Australian.
But and look, there's some conversations we're not going to give to the virtual assistant to do as well. So, dealing with our landlords, there's obviously some conversations, communication we're not giving to the virtual assistant, but there is up to 30 property management tasks you can effectively outsource. You can go to teamsbydesign.com, get that list from there. So you just got to be smart around what you're going to give to them and what you're not, but don't write them off completely. There's obviously things that they can effectively do and keep them away from others. Now, with training, Michael, what are the absolute essential tools that you need between a person in the office and a virtual assistant? What are those tools of communication that get tasks effectively delegated quickly?
So we've used a few. We've settled with Slack. It's a free version, so your office can have it. It's better than Skype. We know some people offices use a Skype. With Slack, you can have multi-chat conversations going on, so you don't have 10 different chats going on in the one conversation. You want a tool where you can do video, where you can do voice, where you can do text. Okay. And then you've got email also. We're able to share documents. I know, Darren, you're using Google Chat, MS Teams. So you've got people that use Google and those that, use Microsoft.
Microsoft, yeah. So Microsoft and Google universes do have virtual team platforms for this very thing, because your virtual assistant is a team member. So I think with COVID and everything, Michael, these things have really evolved very well.
Haven't they? They've just gone tenfold.
Great. I love it.
But it's so important that we communicate, and you need to have open communication. And with your virtual assistant, you need to be prepared and comfortable to be in front of a video like Zoom to have conversations like this, because they work with your company, but they just work from home.
But communication, I think face-to-face is good, just for general chatting or whatever. Task delegation, screen recording is an absolute must. And so Loom, LOOM.com, we use heavily. It's a great program to quickly screen record what you see, what you say on your screen, whether you're going over a property management software task or whatever. And you press a button, bang, it uploads it instantly to the internet. You get a link, just like a YouTube link. It's very private. You give that link in the chat to that other person. You put it into a Google task or a formal tasking system, and they can go back to that link at any time, watch that task at any time. Not something you do on the phone, because if you're talking to someone live, you've got the problems of them being available at the same time as you and vice versa. That's a real problem. But then them forgetting half the detail. You want it all on the video recording, solves all of that problem. So please, when you're working with virtual assistants, you've got to get understanding the full suite of tools available. Of course, you get in contact with Michael and the team at teamsbydesign.com. They can give you all of that advice that you need there. But please don't go in only using half the tools. You will struggle. All righty. Now, moving on, Michael, we've talked about accent issues. We've got to be selective about what we do give, but there's so much. 80% of tasks in the property management business can be outsourced. Training, we talked about tools and things like that. Going on AWOL, another one that I'm putting on the list here that we haven't got formally on our list, Michael, is a professional working environment. Now, I remember many years ago dealing with my bookkeeper, and I was dealing with them, it was no big deal, but we had the pig noises in the background and the rooster going off and the motorbikes going zoom, zoom, and all this background noise going on. I wouldn't want my customers hearing that. So how do you deal with that? I mean, you've got a team of well over 50 VAs now, Michael. How do you deal with these rules set down with your VAs?
Sometimes it's hard, given on location. We can't help what's outside their property, and some places are really thin walled. What we can do though is, we ask for photos, regular photos of the workstation. So clear mind, clear desk, clear mind. A professional workstation, multiple screens, the ability to kind of do your job. Now, the noises. So we get our team to download software. There's one called Crisp with a K, and that helps reduce. It's like noise cancelling. So if you did have a rooster or a motorbike or someone at the back, it cuts that noise out from that conversation and gives you a close, crisp sound to that call. But you're right. There's a lot of people who work from home and they have got roosters.
Now, I know you hear it. It's regular, but also not just sound, but visual noise as well. If you're speaking, or they have to speak to a customer, people walking past in the background, or a real crappy looking background, or what sort of rules do you have in place there?
Yeah, so you can't have a fan facing you, because when there's a fan facing you on the microphone, you hear that and the crackle. Yep. You've got to have, like Darren, you've got a blurred out background there, right? That's acceptable too. Our team actually have a TBD background that they use when they have their meeting.
They've got to have backgrounds, because their normal background isn't looking very professional, is it?
No, I mean, they've got a desk. It'd be a luxury to have a spare room, to have a home office. So they'd be using a bedroom or another space. Now we make sure it's quiet and it's it's presentable and it's a proper work environment for them. But yeah, we need to give them the tools and the instruction just to make sure that have this type of background. Don't have the fan here. Have the air conditioning on, but don't have it blowing in your face.
Now we or Teams by Design want team members working from home. Okay, there are issues of them working in a work center where they have to travel 1 or 2 hours in that crazy Filipino traffic. That just damages their life.
Darren.
COVID, where they've been forced home now from these big centers, they're not wanting to go back into that work center environment. They want to work from home. We want to get them to work from home. Everybody's happy. It works really well. But then we're talking about, we do have power outages, an internet outage issue, or unstable internet. How do you deal with those?
So, one thing that frustrates me immensely, Darren, is when we get all new recruits to kind of give us what their internet speed is. And when I see them give me an internet speed of like 956 megabytes per second upload and 700 megabits per second download, I think we are really held back in Australia. So if you're worried about internet speeds abroad, Australia is lacking.
And New Zealand would be worse than Australia in some cases. So they're not doing too bad.
Now, what you find in the Philippines and other Asian countries is they have a lot of rolling power outages. And so those rolling power outages, some are advised in advance, a majority are advised in advance, and then there are some that are just spare at the moment. And that's so they can provide level electricity across where people are living. Now, that can be frustrating because it might be during your operation of business, okay? What we encourage people to have is a UPS, which is like an uninterrupted power supply, like a backup battery, where they can still plug their computer in. But it might mean that their internet is down, but they might be able to tether off their phone. Okay, so yes, anywhere in the Philippines, whoever you employ, they may sometimes have slow internet because there's been a power outage, and also the provider. There's only a handful of providers. Here we have a number of providers. Over there's only a handful of them, and the power outages. Don't worry if they've gone down and it's a power outage, because if it's admin tasks, they will do that work as soon as it's online. The stress and pressure you're feeling is magnified to the stress and pressure that they are feeling when they're going under. We have team members that have both telco providers, so the internet, if it goes down with one, it's running with the other as a backup. Having that UPS is a luxury over there, so it might be something you want to invest in your team member, so that if it does go down, they've got that backup supply for a few hours until the power comes through. Before you hire someone, check their internet speed, right? Check it over different times of the day so that you know what the bandwidth is going to be.
You just got to go to speedtest.net, right? And that's easy. Just do your speed test. But speed tests are really important. What's the minimum download and upload speed that you have for your team members, Michael?
Oh, look, it's got to be minimum like 50, 20, right? So as long as they're able to upload 20 megabytes a second and they can download 50 or 40. For voice, if you're doing voice calls, you only really need 3 megabytes a second upload.
Yeah.
Right? It's not much, but just make sure, because there are some areas where they may not have good reach of internet there.
I think we need to just very quickly talk about the impact of weather. So, we're talking storms, typhoons, that sort of thing. And now with my team members, the worst I've seen is probably a whole day they've been knocked out with power. But, I think every now and again, you may have a typhoon come through or a storm or something like that. What happens there, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I find this in Australia too. If we have like really harsh weather, my internet sometimes goes a bit weak. The infrastructure over there, if there is typhoons, there's a chance that the internet may go out or the power may go out. I find that their road crews though are pretty fast in putting things back together, given the population and given the spread of where people live. They're pretty good. So Darren, my advice would be just hang tight. If there's bad weather, have their mobile phone number, or at least if you've got Slack on their phone, they can communicate with you doing things like that.
Yeah.
Not all is lost.
Yeah, correct. And a lot of them, still have phone data. So if you got Slack or Workplace or using Google Chats or something like that, they can send you a quick message because their phone's still working. So they're the sort of things that you can easily do. It's just getting to understand the communication tools and just keeping those lines of communication open. But it's not a big issue. It happens every now and again, and you just got to be aware, All right, next one, Michael. We're going to get into the productivity stuff now. So let's talk about issues around not enough work to do. Now, I think, certainly with new people with VAs, They really not understanding of, they're not giving enough work, or not giving them enough work to do. How do you deal with that issue?
So this is a big one too. You bring someone on, you may only give them one task to do, and that takes up 1 hour of their week, or let's say 8 hours of their week. And they sit there and they don't know what to do. And if you're not communicating with them, then there's going to be a breakdown. When you don't give them enough work to do, essentially you give them one task, they're going to spend the whole week trying to do that one task. It's really important that when you go to employ someone, that you have all the tasks that you're thinking of in mind written down. So like Darren said, we've got that task list for you to go have a look at and work out which are your wish list of tasks, and then detail the best way for them to do those tasks, and then structure their day accordingly. Give them some time blocking of how you want things done. But just don't assume that they're going to be thinking outside the square of what else can they do to make your life better. They're going to be following the instructions that you give them. Yes, there might be some framework where they'll kind of think laterally and problem solve, but don't think that you give them one task, they're going to do the other 3 tasks that are attributed to that. So leasing, for example, handling the leasing inquiries. Don't think they're going to do the lease preparation, and don't think they're going to do the DocuSign and everything else that goes with that unless you've told them to do that.
Yep, cool. All righty. So next one is identifying unproductive.
So we have software that we use that identifies what websites and how much screen time that people are using on certain platforms, websites and tasks. So we know very fast what's unproductive. So, if people are on websites they shouldn't be on, we get alerted to that. We also screen record, screen grab every minute, every 30 seconds, the screen, so we can see what screens people are actually on.
I've seen that too, that you can measure how much productive time they've actually done. So they're kept accountable to that.
Yeah, and I think people don't realize when you go through a company like Teams by Design, we monitor that. If you're doing it on your own, you don't really have the ability to track fairly because you're busy doing so many other things. We actively track and monitor that so that you are getting the most efficient use of time. And also too, we can see where people are struggling. Like by having that software, we can see what people are spending too much time on that would be considered above average. We can try and give that support. That's really, there's other platforms out there where you can be more intrusive or spy-like, where they don't know what's going on. But we let our team know that they got to log every task and they can see when screen records are being taken.
Okay, well, let's just talk about feedback and addressing issues with virtual assistants. And let's just talk about, that in quality control. Let's just talk about, dealing with issues when things aren't done right.
I think a lot of property managers want to avoid confrontation. And so giving feedback is the last thing that people want to give generally, because they think that the person should be able to use their brain and figure it out themselves. One of the biggest mistakes is not giving the time it takes to give constructive feedback. And giving them further direction on how to resolve and how to be better at that particular task. It's amazing how fast these guys can pick up the task and how efficient they can be. But if you give them bad advice and you don't give them feedback, you're almost setting yourself up for failure. And then the other thing too on that, Darren, is giving them tasks, not giving them feedback, and expecting immediate results. Right? So I hired you to do this task. Why aren't you doing it how I want it to do? There's a grace period of people like trying to learn and understand how you want it done in a particular time frame and efficiency that you do it in.
Yeah, and it comes down to that's just dealing with any team member, whether it's in office or whether it's virtual assistant. If you employed a new person on the ground in the office there and you just throw them in, here's your desk, here's your phone, good luck, you're on your own, you're going to have consequences and issues. There has to be a training, a handing over. This is the way we do it. And whether you're doing in office or with a virtual assistant, it's got to be done right so they fully understand, what's involved there.
Yeah, and I find people in office are more forgiving of people in office when they shouldn't be, because people in office when they don't understand something, they can pad out that task to make it look like they're really trying. And maybe they are. But, when someone is remote, they're less forgiving because like, well, I gave you that task at 12 o'clock and it's 12:03. Why haven't I got it back? It would have taken me 2 minutes to do that task, right? It's having that right expectation there. And these are all things that are trained. If you hit any of these obstacles, this isn't necessarily a red flag.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Let's just talk about, so with feedback and examining their quality of work, you also, with the people that do voice calls, you actually record every phone call and you can listen to it. So you've got full control over the conversations they're having in another country within seconds.
Yeah, we can actually jump onto a live call that's happening as at now, right? But we have a QA team and they listen to every single call. And we look at things for like empathy, sympathy. Were they able to resolve the question? Did they take ownership?
Were they culturally relevant?
Yeah, like we don't want to become a glorified message-taking service. Like we want to be able to answer the call and resolve the question, because then that's relieving you from further work if we can address it. And if it needs to be escalated, we can escalate it. But having that QA environment, we also reward the team. We have quarterly awards, monthly awards for who was best at the productivity with calls, who met empathy guidelines. Like we have a whole metric for how we assess each call, which a lot of offices themselves don't have internally.
So just as a reminder, everybody, look, whenever you're dealing with people, there's always going to be issues. But what we're saying is you do get more issues with a person in office. Of course, it's a lot more expensive. You may not get the level of task consistency. You got staff turnover, all of those sort of things. There's a lot less issues when you're correctly dealing with virtual assistants, because whatever you successfully outsource with the tasks in the office really does become set and forget. And it's amazing how peaceful your life becomes. And in this day and age, teams are just so busy now, caught up in the mundane, caught up in the grunt work. You want to release them from that so they can now be launched into dollar productive, high value growth tasks that are going to grow and strengthen your business. Your most expensive team members are people on the ground. You don't want them doing tasks that could easily be done by someone costing you a lot less. And that's what outsourcing's all about. So, Michael, great podcast. We talked about 8 key issues that you need to be aware of when working with virtual assistants. What's the best way at this point if someone's saying, look, I want to talk to you about how I can make this work for me? What's the best way that people can contact you?
Before I do that, can I just give one more away? Can we give one more point away? Hiring one person to do everything. I know we touched on previous podcasts, but this is a big mistake, thinking that your VA is going to be able to do absolutely everything you need them to do. So make sure when you're recruiting, you're very clear on the tasks and their strengths, right? Work out what their strengths are and identify that, because you're not going to get someone who's good with numbers trying to edit your social media and your video editing.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get someone to do your invoicing and accounts if they don't understand numbers.
But that same rule applies to anyone in the office. You're not going to get your trust accounting person doing the BDM work. So this is all just, common sense. I think that's a great 9th point there, Michael. So well done. And again, how can people get in contact with you?
Yep. So go to teamsbydesign.com, go to the contact us, drop an inquiry there, and we'll come back to you as soon as possible.
Also, just be aware, again, there's up to 30 tasks that you can successfully outsource. Take off your team, make them unbusy. Don't let them just stay on that hamster wheel of mundane tasks. For those up to 30 property management tasks, go to teamsbydesigntasks.com, download that. Of course, get in touch with us and how we can help you with outsourcing solutions too. Thanks everybody for listening.
Thanks, Darren.